Production of Vote Utah 2014 election night coverage is made possible by generous grants from Zions Bank, serving the communities of Utah for over 140 years. Zions Bank offers a range of banking services for individuals and businesses, large and small. Learn more at zionsbank.com. And from Qualtrics, supporting business and the academic community with online survey services and expertise. More information at qualtrics.com. Qualtrics, the ridiculously powerful insight platform. And from the law firm of Ray, Quinney & Nebeker, a multi-service local law firm actively seeking to improve the quality of life in our community. Over 100 attorneys serve Utahns' legal needs from offices in Salt Lake City and Provo. Learn more at rqn.com. Additional production funding comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And from Nu Skin, demonstrating a 30-year commitment to community support and offering nutritional and personal care products. Nu Skin, the difference demonstrated. Learn more at nuskin.com.
2 minutes before 8 p.m. in the Mountain West. Good evening. I'm Ken Verdoia alongside Professor of Political Science Dave Magleby. We are very close to the release of the much anticipated KBYU Utah exit poll survey results. We do want to remind you we are also tracking, in addition to the Utah races, which we'll be providing information on in just about 1 minute, we are tracking nationwide results as well. We will be talking with our analysts looking at specific races throughout the United States. We want to bring up very quickly to remind you of a graphic. The big focus tonight has been the United States Senate. There are in play 36 seats. If we could take a look at that graphic, there are 36 seats up this year, 33 regularly scheduled, 3 that are special election. We do know at this hour that the Republicans have gained 3 Democratic seats and put them in the Republicans' aisle. That will translate to being halfway to taking over majority of the United States Senate. But throughout this evening, we have been hearing time and time again about the interest in the KBYU Utah election exit poll results. This has been brought together by an army of 1,200 students from universities throughout the state of Utah. They've been at the polling places today. We've been conducting telephone interviews with people who have engaged in early voting. Again, alongside Professor Dave Magleby, we've talked time and time again with people tonight. It's much anticipated.
Well, it is.
We can hear the results.
We're still interviewing, Ken.
Yes.
There are 200 to 400 people in line at some Davis County.
Is that right?
In-person voting locations. There's been lines there during the day. We'll continue to interview those people until they've left. And we're still on the phones, taking in data. So when we release the results here in just a moment, those are not final. We'll be continuing to update those through the evening because the votes are still coming. It's past 8 o'clock now, and so we can release the Utah College's exit poll. We commit to voters when we interview them that we will not do that until the 8 o'clock p.m. Let's start with the Utah 4th Congressional District, and this is a race between Mia Love and Doug Owens, and we have that one is at 51-47 with Love in the lead. It is just barely within the margin of error. We are not projecting this race. It is too close to call. Let's go to the next race, which is the Attorney General's race. Here we do project a winner. Sean Reyes with 63% of the vote as of right now, and Mr. Stormont 32%, the remainder going to other candidates. Going to the 2nd Congressional District. This one's closer than many people anticipated. Mr. Stewart, we project, will win at 53% of the vote, but Luz Robles has come in with 43%. We'll be talking about that through the evening. The 1st Congressional District, again, a bit closer than some might have anticipated. Rob Bishop with 56% of the vote, and Donna McAleer crossing that 40% threshold. And then finally, the 3rd Congressional District, this one the biggest margin of victory for any candidate in the state. Jason Chaffetz at 72% and Brian Wanacott at 24%. The remainder going to minor party candidates. Ken, your reaction?
My reaction is Calvin Rampton told me many years ago that a 1-vote majority seems like a chorus of the angels bidding you to public office. So whether it's 9% or 39%, obviously we see Republican victories shaping up in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd districts. And as we anticipated, and as you and I have discussed now for several weeks, the 4th congressional district will require additional time, counting into the wee hours perhaps, just as we did 2 years ago with Jim Matheson achieving a razor-thin victory over Mia Love at that time. The early numbers and our exit polling shows an advantage to Mia Love, but as you so accurately and quickly point out, it's within the margin of error. We need more information before we project that race.
That's right. Now, Jeff Cannon, a senior in political science from Salt Lake City, is joining us. You've been working on this exit poll project, both in a statistics course and in a political science course. You double dipped here.
I did, yeah.
Well, we're glad you did. Let's talk about the Attorney General's race, because the scandal's been a big part of that story. We've projected Mr. Reyes to win rather handily. What was the impression of Utah voters whom we interviewed today about the Attorney General scandal?
So, well, first off, everybody knows about it. I mean, I think 93% of Utahns said they had heard recently, not just heard about it, but heard recently about the John Swallow
scandal. This is really rare in public opinion research for over 90% to be aware of something. This says that this has clearly reached Utah voters. And what is their impression about the story?
The majority think he is guilty of doing something illegal. About 54% was the last number I saw.
Well, that's right. And we asked them a range of options. What were some of the other things they could have said?
So the big one was said that he's guilty of doing something illegal. The middle one was he's not guilty of doing anything illegal, but he is guilty of doing something unethical. And then the last one, he's guilty of neither.
And that's by far the smallest percentage. So Utah voters had made up their minds, and Mr. Swallow probably named the wise choice by exiting. He was on the brink of impeachment. Let's go to the Matheson-Love race from 2012 and compare it a little bit to the Matheson-Owens race in 2014. We asked voters in a hypothetical situation who they would vote for if Matheson had been on the ballot today. What did they tell us?
So the last I saw was that Matheson was ahead by quite a bit, actually. The last number I saw was about 52% going for Jim Matheson.
So obviously this is a hypothetical. He didn't run. It would have been a different campaign. But it's interesting to ask voters in that congressional district, the same district that Matheson won in by 700 plus votes last time, who would win. Now let's look at party identification. It's the most important predictor of the vote. And let's look at it first in the Attorney General's race. Tell us a little bit about what party identification is first so our viewers understand it.
Well, party identification is just simply which of the two major parties you affiliate with, that you identify with more. And then they gauge kind of strength of partisanship by following it up and asking, do you consider yourself a strong Republican or a not so strong Republican, a strong Democrat or not so strong Democrat? Our
viewers now have on the screen that broken down. We've combined some of those categories that Jeff just mentioned, strong, not strong, and so forth, into 3 categories. So Mr. Reyes gets 92% of the Republican vote. I'm on a telestrator now, and you can see that on your screen. Interestingly, Mr. Stormont gets 86%. I'm rounding, of course, of the Democratic vote. The independent vote went more to Reyes than to Stormont. But the reality in Utah, given the heavy Republican state that it is, Mr. Reyes only has to get Republicans to be able to win the Attorney General's race. Given that baseline, let's now look at the Utah 4 congressional district and party identification. So here we have Mia Love and Doug Owens, and the Democrat, Republican, and Independent vote broken down. Mia Love gets 83% of the vote, substantially lower than Mr. Reyes gets. Doug Owens does even better than Stormont, getting 98% of the Democrats. Not many of them defected. And he gets 64% of the independents. The reason he's behind, whereas Matheson was even or ahead, is because Mia Love has done better among Republicans than Jim Matheson did. Let's look at those data from 2012. I think we've got party. Okay, we don't have that. So the answer is, though, Jeff, I think you know it. What percentage of the vote did Matheson get of the Republican vote?
I think it was probably between 25 and 30. Among the independent-leaning Republicans, he got about 35%.
Right. And that was a margin that was enough to propel him to victory,
Yeah.
and it was consistently the margin. So, Ken, the way to win in Utah, if you're a Democrat, is you have to get about 30% of the independent-leaning Republicans and weak Republicans, which Matheson consistently did, which Jan Graham did, which Bill Orton did. And the question will be, can Doug Owens come close enough to that tonight to win? Or to flip the question, can Mia Love get 80, 83, 84% of the Republicans, just enough for her to squeak into victory tonight? That's what we'll be watching as we proceed.
And again, we are still receiving data and information from the exit poll survey process. We have not declared a projected winner in Utah's 4th congressional district. I also note how much the heart grows fond after Jim Matheson announces he's not seeking re-election, and how his actual numbers kicked up a little bit too. We do have short memories sometimes in the voting public. I want to remind you that if you are interested in seeing the exit poll data in further detail, please visit our Vote Utah website. That's Vote Utah, one word, voteutah.org. We'll have exit poll results. Some are already being posted. Additional poll results will be posted very, very quickly. I do want to turn over to our regional analysts, because a quick look at the United States Senate races is in order right now. As I indicated, the Republicans needed to gain +6 to take control of the United States Senate. Currently, they are at +3. We'll talk more about their 3 gains in a minute, but let's go to Audrey Heaton, who's been following the Louisiana Senate race for us, one of the most hotly contested. Audrey, where do we stand on that race?
In Louisiana, it's looking pretty even right now. We have Democrat incumbent Mary Landrieu at 40% of the vote. The Republican challenger, Bill Cassidy, at 42%, and another Republican challenger who is Tea Party backed, Rob Maness, at 14%. And so in Louisiana, candidates need 15% of the vote or 50% of the vote in order to gain the Senate seat, like in Georgia. So it's looking like they're going to go to a runoff in December.
So we have, as you just mentioned, the potential for 2 runoffs in the state of Georgia and in the state of Louisiana.
Yes.
This would play out in December in Louisiana. January, after the actual convening date of the United States Senate, would be the Georgia runoff. I've just received an update, and I'm going to ask Tyler to jump in and join me on this. We've just received notification that one network, I believe it's Fox, has declared the Colorado Senate race. Can you give me any information on that?
Yes, that is correct. Republican challenger Cory Gardner, it has been called that he has defeated incumbent Democrat Mark Udall.
Now, this is one of the most targeted Senate races in the entire United States, a real litmus test battleground. Give us a little bit of background on how the 2 candidates shaped up in this general election.
Yeah, absolutely. Recently, Colorado has passed some very liberal initiatives and liberal policies, and they've received some pushback. And in order to combat that, the Democrats have really tried to make Cory Gardner out to be a really radical conservative.
Now, Cory Gardner is a United States House of Representative based in, if I recall correctly, northeastern Colorado, rural area, largely rural area.
Yes, that is correct. He left a safe seat in the House to run for Senate.
And of course, the name Udall has been a signature fixture in national politics for many years in the Mountain West. Was Udall viewed as particularly weak coming up for re-election?
You know, he wasn't seen as particularly weak, but people believe he ran a weak campaign by focusing on one issue against Gardner, whereas Gardner focused on many issues and maintained a positive attitude.
Let's talk about that one issue. What was it, Tyler? And I think you got an ad on that issue.
Yeah, we do have an ad on it. It's the issue of personhood.
Say what that means.
So personhood, by the basic definition, is when does a fetus become a human being, basically is what it is. And they painted Cory Gardner out to believe that he felt personhood believes as soon as it becomes a fetus.
At the point of conception.
Exactly.
Let's take a look at the way they try to communicate this complex subject to a voting public.
I'm Mark Udall, and I approve this message. As you're making your decision, remember,
a bill that everybody says is basically a personhood bill at the federal level. You're telling me it's not.
Cory Gardner is still sponsoring the personhood bill in Congress. His name is right there, but Gardner just keeps denying it. Gardner's denials even failed the independent fact check.
And a less charitable interpretation is that you're not telling us the truth.
Whether it's with our rights and freedoms or his own word, Colorado just can't trust the real Cory Gardner.
A debate moderator expressing an opinion like that.
Quite interesting. But Tyler, Representative Gardner had no problem parrying that by saying, oh yeah, well, you know Barack Obama. In fact, his messages. Isn't that really one of the primary themes he exercised in his paid advertising?
He really did. One of Senator Udall's main points was that he's independent and he likes to lean on both sides of the aisle and, really make things happen. But Cory Gardner was able to effectively demonstrate that that may not actually be the case. And that resonated well with Colorado voters.
It translated to paid advertising as well. Let's take a look at what Representative Gardner had to say.
6 years ago, Mark Udall got elected on a promise to be bipartisan. But in Washington, he was rigid on the party line. Now his campaign's gotten too tired and too mean. Senator Udall's brand of politics divides us. It keeps us from fixing Obama's failures, and it puts our children deep in debt. When my party is wrong, I'll say it. When something is broken, I'll fix it. I'm Cory Gardner, and I approved this message. I'd be honored to have your support.
Well, Tyler, thank you very much. You're watching a couple. In fact, you could be here for days waiting for Alaska to come in, but we'll check back with you later on. Right now, we do want to turn our attention back to our United States Senate map. As we told you, the makeup of the Senate is one of the pivotal outcomes of this election. Right now, we have those numbers pegged at 48 Republican, 46 Democrat. I am told this includes Senator Udall's seat shifting from Democrat to the Republicans. So now the Republicans, who had to go +6, have gone +4. They are now 2/3 of the way to taking control of the United States Senate. We really haven't had a surprise though yet, have we?
Not yet, nope. But we might have one. Let's go to Kansas, Jordan Beal is following that race. It's been a lot of surprises. Jordan, tell us about the Kansas Senate race.
Well, the Kansas Senate race is a really interesting one where incumbent Pat Roberts, he's the Republican candidate, was running against, I can't remember his name.
The independent candidate, Mr. Gorman.
Well, he was running against the Democratic candidate, but the Democrat received pressure from the Democratic Party so that Greg Orman could step in to be the sole contestant in the race against Pat Roberts as an independent candidate.
And how has this candidate done? How has Mr. Orman done?
He has actually done really well. Currently, the race is showing that 38% of the votes have come in, and it's too close to call at this point. But in pre-election day polls, it was also very close as well.
Let's look at some ads in this race. How did Orman define himself?
Well, Orman worked really hard to define himself as an independent, above partisan politics. And this ad really shows how he strives to be above that.
Good, let's see that ad.
Washington's stuck between two parties who care more about winning than they care about our country. We can get back on track if we just find common ground. Most Kansans just want government to live within its means and stop telling the rest of us how to live our lives. Hey, you guys accomplishing anything? Didn't think so. I'm Greg Orman, the independent for U.S. Senate, and I approve this message because something has to change.
We're trying to keep up with the numbers. They're shifting even as we speak. Montana is indicated as going into the Republican column as well. The New York Times, which is one of the sources we're looking at, along with Fox and all the other networks, we're trying to bring them all together and try to reconcile before we project them to you. But we're also trying to share with you the most up-to-date information. So, go ahead, please, Dave.
Ryan, why don't you, or Jordan, I should say, why don't you show us how Roberts responded? He brought in a new campaign manager, They could tell they were in trouble. His fundraising was weak. How did Roberts respond to this challenge from an independent person?
Well, Roberts worked very hard to link Greg Orman to Barack Obama in order to dissuade a lot of Kansans, which is a very Republican state, from voting for him. And this ad really depicts that well.
Let's take a look.
Greg Orman doesn't want you to know how liberal he really is. He's with the Obama administration on protecting the train wreck known as Obamacare. He's silent on the Keystone Pipeline, and he's given thousands of dollars to liberals, including administration ally Harry Reid. Orman is their best hope to prevent a change in Washington. Vote no on Greg Orman. The U.S. Chamber is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Let's continue then, Jordan, in your region with the Iowa Senate race. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, the Iowa Senate race is an open seat because the incumbent, Tom Harkin, dropped out of the race. And so it's between Bruce Braley, who's the Democrat, and Joni Ernst, who is the Republican candidate. It has been a really negative campaign on both sides. A lot of accusations and allegations. But there have been a lot of really interesting ads.
One of them has generated a lot of national attention. It's how Joni Ernst defined herself.
Yeah, and it has gained a lot of attention from both sides of the aisle, so we can watch it now.
I'm Joni Ernst. I grew up castrating hogs on an Iowa farm. So when I get to Washington, I'll know how to cut pork.
Joni Ernst, mother, soldier, conservative.
My parents taught us to live within our means. It's time to force Washington to do the same. To cut wasteful spending, repeal Obamacare, and balance the budget. I'm Joni Ernst, and I approve this message because Washington's full of big spenders. Let's make them squeal.
One of the
that went viral.
One of the interesting challenges is how female candidates define themselves in politics. We're getting more and more women running. But you saw one earlier where Grimes in Kentucky shoots a gun and teaches Senator McConnell how to hold a rifle. Here we've got one that talks about growing up on a farm.
Well, this became particularly important because of the patronizing comments that were made by the incumbent senator, Senator Harkin, towards Ms. Ernst, referring to her as a pretty little gal, and I bet you she's smart, but, and there was a strong response from conservative women saying, thank you very much, Senator, but that's not the way you refer to a strong political candidate. So Joni Ernst holding her own, and at the present time, let's go back and double check. Do we have any figures in that race up to the date?
Currently, there's 20% of the vote. This is reported by CNN. There's 20% of the vote being accounted for, and it shows that Braley is up 53% to Ernst's 43%.
And again, still a lot of account in front. Yeah. No one has projected that race, and I believe we do need to make a note of explanation as well. We have one entity that has declared the Colorado race at this point. Now, that entity is not being joined by others, so we reported to you that the Fox network had declared Colorado for Representative Gardner over the incumbent Democratic Senator Udall. But I do need to point out that right now that is a single voice making that declaration. They have not been joined by other sources.
I think we have Congressman Rob Bishop at Salt Lake City with Eric, our reporter there. Eric?
Yes, a man who knows Capitol Hill very well, according to our Utah College's exit poll, is going to get to know it even better. Now, Congressman Bishop, now we know that the Republicans could gain control of the Senate tonight. And if they were to gain control of the Senate tonight, what would you hope to accomplish that you haven't been able to do before?
We'll get a whole lot of bills actually passed that way. And actually, it puts things differently. It's not necessarily the bills themselves, because the filibuster rule is still there. But when something does pass and it goes to a conference committee, right now we don't have many conference committees. That puts the conference committee process back into play, and I think that's going to be very positive going forward. I look forward to that.
Great, great. Now, what issues do you feel like that you represent have really touched your voters in the 1st District?
Well, I hope everything in which I'm doing. The 2 main committees I have deal with natural resources, and 70% of Utah is owned by the federal government. And the other is with the military. And with the state of our readiness and the position of Hill Air Force Base, it's a critical part of all of that. I'm looking forward actually to going back on both those committees and working very hard in the future on those areas.
That's great. That's great. Now, you've been in Congress quite a few times, and according to our polls, you're going back again. Anything you want to do differently this time around?
Well, there are going to be some different situations. So I am looking forward to trying to be the chairman of the Resource Committee. It means we're going to, and I tend to deal with those issues differently than we have done in the past. And there's a whole lot of things I would like to do in that arena. I'm also going to still be a senior member on the Armed Services Committee. But one thing I recognize is the things I would like to see accomplished can't be done within my committee alone. So I'm going to have to reach out to other committees and work together with them, which is something we haven't done in a long time.
Great, so to ensure better cooperation. Now, I understand we have a few questions from the studio. So Ken and Dr. Magleby, go ahead.
Congressman Bishop, can you hear me? Over the music there, can you hear me?
He can't hear you.
Well, tell him I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead and relay the questions to the congressman.
Well, I noticed that he didn't mention his assignment on the Rules Committee, the most powerful committee in the House. Why did he not mention that?
So, did you hear he mentioned about the Rules Committee? Why didn't you mention about the Rules Committee?
The Rules Committee is a significant committee. It's an arm of the Speaker. I enjoy the ability of actually preceding and reviewing bills before they come to the floor, but it's a horrible committee on which to serve. There are no time limits on any of the speeches, and we have a whole lot of people that talk a whole long time on everything. I don't think if I'm chairman I'm going to be able to stay on the Rules Committee, and it's a little bit different than the Rules Committee in the state legislature, because I was chairman of that. We actually had more ability to influence the direction of legislation in the state of Utah with rules than you do in Washington.
Thank you, Congressman. Sorry, it's hard to hear.
Thank you so much, Congressman Bishop. We appreciate your time tonight, and congratulations.
That's quite all right. That's our Eric Mock at the Salt Lake Hilton Hotel, Utah Republican Election Night headquarters, speaking with Representative Rob Bishop, who will be going back to Washington for 2 more years, who has our projection check next to his name for winning. Although I must say, David, not a resounding victory, solid victory, but not as resounding as his incumbency might have led us to believe, at least based on our exit poll projections.
No, that's right. There'll be analysis done on this within the Republican Party, and Mr. Bishop, especially given the wider margins he's had in prior races. Ms. McAleer, this was her 2nd time, and so she was a better, stronger candidate. But there'll be some question about whether there's some vulnerability here. That is true.
I would dare say we probably have not seen the last of Donna McAleer as a candidate. She has run 2, if slightly underfunded campaigns. She's run 2 issue-oriented campaigns in a very conservative district. Right. She doesn't run, shall you say, left of center. She runs a very centrist campaign. So she has her military experience she draws on readily. So that is the first congressional race, which we have indicated with our projection at 8 p.m. that Representative Rob Bishop would be reelected. And of course, in the offing, within reach for him, is the chairmanship of the coveted House Resource Committee, Natural Resources Committee. It used to be called the old Interior Committee. It's the public lands. It's that big committee that deals with so many issues that are central to Utah. This could be a great position for him to be in the coming 2 years. We will obviously follow that quite closely. I do want to note that the Vote Utah Election Night broadcast is a collaboration of academic partners, and you're seeing the work tonight in our exit polling, and we want to thank them very much. It would not be possible without their participation, but it also, in fact, right here, David, why don't you recognize your colleagues?
Yeah, Mr. Raleigh at Westminster, Mr. Kahn at Utah State, Mr. Desart at UVU, and then also Leah Murray at Weber State, Kevin Stein at Southern Utah University, Dan Williams here at BYU, as well as Joseph Olson in the College of Family, Home, and Human Social Sciences, and Howard Christensen.
And let me also say, since I'm so comfortable working in public television, saying that production funding is made possible through the general support and generous support of Zions Bank, our good friends at Qualtrics, the law firm of Ray, Quinney, and Nebaker. Additional funding support provided by our friends at Google and by Nu Skin. Their contributions have made tonight's election night coverage and Vote Utah on KBYU from the campus of Brigham Young University possible this evening. To each of you that's joined us so far, stay with us. We will be coming back in just a few minutes to continue our election coverage and bring you more details from Utah's exit poll data. Stay with us. From the campus of Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, the studios of BYU Broadcasting, I'm Ken Verdoia, alongside political science professor Dave Magleby. At 8 o'clock, we initially presented the first data from the KBYU Utah election exit poll. We continue to refine that data. Dave, why don't you give us an update on the most important, or not the most important, but perhaps the most closely watched races that we've been tracking.
And the closest race.
Yes.
And that is the Love-Owens race. It is 51-47 still. That's within the margin of error, so we continue to watch it, and votes are continuing to be cast and tallied. That'll go on for another hour or more in that congressional district, Ken. So we will continue to update it. If it widens, it won't need to widen by very much to be one we'll call, but it so far is not one we're ready to call.
And let me ask you just the layman's question. If I were sitting at home and I saw 50.8%, is not that reason enough? What are you looking at to make sure that this is a solid projection?
There's a margin of error with every survey, and when we say plus or minus 2, it means it could be as high as 53, or it could be as low as 49. And therefore Owens, when we add 2, could be neck and neck with her. And so we really don't know with confidence that Mia Love has won this. If she can get that margin a bit wider and the margin of error stays plus or minus 2, then she's outside the margin of error, and it will be a race we would declare for her.
Okay, well, let's look at additional data.
Let's look at the Attorney General's race. That one was not as hard to call. And that one is for Mr. Reyes at 63% and for Mr. Stormont at 32%, with 6% going to other candidates. So a pretty substantial victory for Mr. Reyes, and one a race that we have called.
And just to clarify that this is to fill the unexpired term of John Swallow, who was elected Attorney General and then removed himself, resigned from office amid an investigation. Mr. Reyes was appointed. This is his election to stand, now hold the seat as his own, but to fill out the term of John Swallow as Attorney General. He will stand for election.
Well, and our exit poll data that Jeff described earlier shows that a substantial 90% plus are aware of the controversy surrounding Mr. Swallow, and most of them think he broke the law.
And what's interesting is for both Sean Reyes and Charles Stormont, each of these candidates kind of professed, I am that breath of fresh air. I am separate from all that has gone in the past. I'm setting this ship in order, or I'm the person to set the ship in order. And from what we're seeing from all of our exit poll information and the ballots that are now being cast or counted, obviously Sean Reyes is going to be securing that term of office for himself with a rather substantial election victory.
Joining us now is Catherine Westmoreland, a senior in political science from Portland, Oregon. Catherine, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Now, you were part of this project 2 years ago, so are you just a glutton for punishment? Do you come back for more?
You know, I must be. I was heavily involved in the political science side of the class in 2012, and I loved it, so I'm here and back for more.
Well, and I'm grateful. You've been so helpful to making this happen. The institutional memory has been wonderful. You've been looking at a range of issues. In the exit poll, we often want to ask issues. They can be informative in terms of how people vote, but it also helps us get a sense for where public policy ought to be in Utah, what the public, what the voters really think about a range of issues. Let's walk through some of the issues. Are you going to start, I think, with the same-sex marriage issue?
Yeah, so let's start by looking at same-sex marriage and public opinion on that, see what Utah voters think. So here we see that 35% of Utah voters would be in favor of allowing same-sex marriage. Then we have a 38% who are in favor of allowing civil unions, and then 27% who are not in favor of either of those options.
This is interesting because the neither, I think, would have been 6 years ago, 4 years ago, the modal answer here, whereas now it's allow civil unions, and less than 27% favor traditional marriage as the solution to what we do with gay marriage. It's a big change in public opinion in Utah.
I do think these results are surprising and not what most voters would expect to see. You know, the Supreme Court case that we just had in June, may have shifted public opinion a little bit on that. We're seeing that 91% of Utah voters think that same-sex marriage will likely become the national trend and is likely to happen on a national scale.
And we actually asked voters that. They're going to pull it up because the graphic's there. Let's look at what Utah voters think. Do they think it's going to become legal nationally? And what do we find?
So just as I said, 91%, if you combine the people who say that it's likely and very likely to see same-sex marriage on a national scale, they think that that will happen, that we'll see that coming.
And that's very interesting, Ken, in light of the debate at the Attorney General's level about whether Utah should have been appealing this. Utah voters voting today or voting earlier by absentee and early votes overwhelmingly think this is going to happen. They seem somewhat resigned to it.
And I think what you're saying here, Dave, is that they view it as an eventuality, not necessarily as part of their advocacy.
Right.
Not something
it's their sense of the politics of it. Yeah, not their personal view. We saw that in the earlier question. And then we also talked about whether there should be a constitutional amendment on this matter. And there, Utah voters, again, how do they see it?
So 55% of Utah voters are in favor of keeping a traditional, adding a constitutional amendment that would define marriage as the traditional kind of take on marriage.
So there's a range of ideas here. They're not giving up. A majority of Utahns would go that way. And as we talk later in the night with some U.S. senators and congresspersons, we can ask them about that. Let's shift to another issue. The other issues that were important to Utah, we asked a range of them. What did you find?
So we asked voters about a variety of issues, and we asked them to rank which issues they thought were most important. So if we are to pull up those results, we're able to see what issues Utah voters thought were most important. So.
And they've got it in front of them now.
Exactly. So if we're looking at the issues, people say that jobs and the economy are the most important issue. So we asked voters on a scale of 1 to 3 what the most important issue. So the results that we're seeing now are the people who ranked things as 3, what people thought were the very most important issues. So jobs and economy, obviously a big one, always going to be on that scale. Healthcare reform, not a big surprise to see here in Utah. We have a lot of people who are opposed to Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act, so not a huge surprise to see that coming up.
And it's interesting because the way that's worded, it could be either side of the issue. People who want to defend Obamacare may also think that's a very important issue. Correct. So it's health care generally. We didn't ask it just about Obamacare. Correct. Well, what about other issues, including ones involving foreign policy or domestic policy that we haven't talked about?
So we asked voters also about the U.S. intervention in different topics, ranging from Ebola to intervening with ISIS, and we saw some different results here.
We're going to turn now. We've got it. Let's look at it. And so this is one where we report a mean score. The higher the score, the more important they thought it was. Correct?
That's correct. So this is scaled on a 1 to 5 scale. So the closer to 5 the score is that you see, the more important the issues thought it was. Voters thought it was.
The most important one is ISIS.
The most important one is ISIS, and
the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria.
Correct.
So that's a huge issue in Utah, and of course Ebola as well. Now we have Congressman Stewart joining Morgan in Salt Lake City.
That's right. Let's go to the Salt Lake Hilton Hotel, Utah Republican Party election headquarters, where our reporter Morgan Miller is standing by with the person we're projecting for re-election, Representative Chris Stewart from Utah's 2nd Congressional District. Morgan.
Yeah, the Stewart camp is looking pretty happy right now. Now, Congressman Stewart, our pre-election or our Our exit polls, sorry.
There you go.
Our exit polls have you in the lead 53-43.
Okay.
Okay. Did you expect that coming into tonight?
Yeah, I think we kind of knew where we were. We've been polling and we've been out around the district, kind of got a good sense of where we were, so we're not terribly surprised.
And this was your second election, your first election as an incumbent.
Yeah.
Was it different? How did you expect it to be different?
A little bit. I mean, they're both fun. I mean, look around tonight, the energy, and it's just a fun night being here tonight. But we're glad to kind of be at this point as well. It's an awful lot of work, a lot of 70-hour weeks. And this was maybe a little bit more relaxed than 2 years ago, but really much the same.
And how would things be different for you if the Senate goes Republican? How would things change for you?
It's huge. It's just huge. Everything that we've worked for the last 2 years, I mean, 90% of that is sitting in the Senate waiting for action. And they're dealing with the very most important issues of the day. I tell people all the time, 396 bills that the House has passed that are sitting in the Senate. Love to see some action on those, and hopefully we will after tonight.
And we have a question from the studio from Dr. Magleby and Ken Verdoia. Go ahead.
Congratulations, Congressman. A quick question. We were just sharing on the air some data from the exit poll today, and a majority of Utahns would favor a constitutional amendment defining marriage as between a single man and a single woman. Would you have any interest in pursuing legislation to that effect?
Well, I think if it's something that, well, first let me say I understand that the people of Utah feel that way, and I'm not surprised by that. I do as well. I mean, my moral teaching is that marriage is between one man and one woman. I think another question that's as equally important, and that is the prerogative of the state to be able to decide that. And I think that's so important because it takes the power from the federal government and retains that in the state. I think we'd look at it. It's honestly not the primary focus of our campaign, or I think the issues that are important to us. It's clearly something that we want to address, but I think we'd want to do it in a thoughtful manner as well.
Congressman, thank you very much for your time this evening. We certainly appreciate it, and congratulations on your projected re-election victory.
Well, thank you. It'll be a good night. We look forward to working for the people of Utah 2nd District in the future. Thank you.
Now, as we update our numbers throughout the course of the evening, we have told you all evening long that the Republican Party needed to go +6 to take control of the United States Senate. That means they had to take 6 current Democratic seats and turn them into Republican victories. We can report right now the Republican Party is now +5. They are 1 confirmed victory away from taking Republican majority control of the United States Senate. I do need to clarify, before we started our interview discussion of exit poll data, I indicated that only one entity had declared the Colorado United States Senate race. I stand corrected now. The Washington Post, New York Times, and the Denver Post have all joined Fox News in declaring Representative Gardner the new senator-elect for the state of Colorado. The Republican Gardner has defeated the incumbent Udall in Colorado.
Wow. Well, they're on their way. Now, the Republicans have a different number they have to get to. They need to get to 51. The Democrats only have to have 50, because if it's a 50-50 Senate, the tie-breaking vote would be cast by the sitting vice president, Joe Biden.
Exactly right.
So their goal is 6, whereas the Democrats can hold a majority with 50. Republicans need 51.
Yes. Very good point. And shall we explore some more data?
Yes, Catherine, I think we were talking about U.S. response to foreign crises, including ISIS. Tell us a little bit about that. How do Utah voters think we should deal with this growing challenge in the Middle East? Should we go military? Should we do something else? Should we be tired of wars and just come home?
So we did ask Utah voters what they thought the U.S. response should be to ISIS. And we gave them a variety of options, from having troops and airstrikes to having no involvement. And what we're seeing is that most voters say, let's send our troops there, and let's also do airstrikes.
That's interesting. You can read this data as in public opinion research 2 ways. You can see it the way you just described it, or you can say that 2/3 of Utah voters, 65%, don't want troops going after ISIS. So you can flip it, and people will debate it. But you're right, the modal answer is both troops and airstrikes, which is a little bit surprising, given the length of time we've been at war in the Middle East already. Let's look at other issues. Well, I think you've got one more you wanted to talk about.
So let's talk about the government shutdown
Good.
really quick. So we asked Utah voters who they thought was responsible for the government shutdown. And it's a little bit surprising to look at these results. So we see that 42% of Utah voters thought House Republicans were responsible for this government shutdown, and 38% thought Barack Obama was responsible. It's a little bit interesting when you break it down by party. We see when we break down by party that 91% of Republicans have a negative view of President Barack Obama. So that's probably where we're getting a lot of this claiming that Barack Obama is the cause of the government shutdown.
Well, and you're right. And I think this is exactly the kind of question we're going to want to analyze in greater depth later. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much for helping us understand some of the issues that were on the minds of voters tonight.
And our updates continue. According to the Washington Post, the Louisiana Senate race will go to a runoff because their projection indicates neither Landrieu nor Cassidy will come close to the 50% threshold to secure an absolute majority. So we will have a runoff, it appears, at least according to the Washington Post, in Louisiana. Long night expected in Kansas.
Well, there's an interesting irony there, Ken, because there's been some speculation that Landrieu wouldn't mind it if this is resolved tonight in terms of who's the majority. It would make a very different runoff than if her seat and that race will decide the majority. And then it becomes a nationalized race. If it's going to be already decided 51-49 or even 50-50 for the Democrats, then it's a different kind of runoff for her. And so there's been speculation that she wouldn't mind one party or the other winning tonight in her own self-interest.
She may have that answer within the next 35 to 40 minutes as we get a couple more results coming in from the West. But for right now, we've asked our team of regional analysts to keep an eye not just on United States Senate races, but also on several key races for governor. And one of the most embattled races in the United States is played out in Florida, with two very popular figures going head-to-head and spending a boatload of money, a Key West boatload of money. And let's go to Ryan Beecham to discuss the Florida race and what information are we getting at this late hour.
Well, this has been a very interesting race between incumbent Republican Governor Rick Scott against former governor, who is now Democrat, Charlie Crist. The results are actually varied. There are a few sources that have said that yes, this race is called and Governor Rick Scott will maintain his position in the governor's mansion. But there are other sources that are still saying that it's too close to call as of now.
That's very interesting because, again, squeezing the last votes out of Miami and Dade County, once again, it almost harkens back to the Bush-Gore election in past years where the ballot went down and literally was a handful of votes that were the determining cause. Tell me how these two candidates were putting themselves forward because they're both very well-known political figures.
They're both very well known, and they're both also very wealthy, and it really came down to negative attacks at their opponents. And actually, in one of their debates, they got very personal, and we have a clip here that we could show showing just how personal these attacks got.
Let's take a look at that right now.
He's all talk and no action, and as a result, those tens of thousands of Floridians that would have a job today in our stalled economy, Rick, aren't getting the employment that they need, and that's just not right.
Charlie, you're the last person that ought to be talking about jobs. You lost 832,000 jobs. So, Charlie, I didn't grow up with money like you did. You grew up with plenty of money.
But you don't know me, and you can't tell my story. Did you know it was for a political fundraiser?
Charlie, she apologized. She apologized. What would you like her to do? She apologized.
Did you know it was for a political fundraiser?
She apologized, Charlie. What would you like her to do?
He doesn't answer questions. Pleads the fifth.
And it could go on and on and on. It was an interesting exchange in the Florida governor's race, but to now we have the projections that Rick Scott, the incumbent Republican, has been reelected over Charlie Crist. That's the most recent projection we have, but with that little asterisk by that projection from some agencies. Others are withholding their projections, saying they still need to have votes come in from the urban areas around Miami before they will make the projection their own as well.
And Ken, this is interesting because there's a set of Tea Party governors that are up. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Kansas joined Florida in having controversial governors elected in 2010 that are Tea Party-backed governors. And so there's a lot of attention being focused on those four. And as we go tonight, we're going to want to revisit them. And this is the first harbinger that Florida may have gone Republican.
That's right, and it's also looking good for Governor Walker in Wisconsin. More about that in a minute, but we want to turn to another one of our projected winners based on the KBYU Utah election exit polling, and that is the current Attorney General for the state of Utah, Sean Reyes. He is at the Salt Lake Hilton Utah Republican Party election headquarters with our Morgan Miller. Morgan, please introduce us to the victorious Sean Reyes.
Yes, he is very victorious. So Sean Reyes, our projection for the KBYU Utah College's exit poll has you 63 and Charles Stormont in a 32. Did you expect that?
You know, we felt really good coming in about the numbers and the polling that we had. I don't think there was any particular number that we were looking for or had in mind. Mainly, Morgan, we just wanted to continue to communicate our message with the people of Utah, that we've made great changes, that we've got great momentum in the office, and we would like to continue to do that. And so that's why we've spent so much time, maybe not campaigning as much, but just going out and doing the business of the people. And if the Attorney General's out doing what he or she should be doing, then the people will see them. And we've been in all the counties trying to be responsive to the needs of the citizens. So the numbers, those are great numbers. We're pleased about that. But more importantly, first of all, I'm now an elected Attorney General. If those numbers hold true and the polls stay consistent with that, not just an appointed Attorney General. And more significantly for the people of Utah, we can continue to protect Utah families from crime and drugs and internet predators. We can continue to protect Utah businesses and Utah consumers and protect the state and fight back against the federal government when it does overreach for more local control. All of those things we will continue to do. And again, I'm so excited for my team, so appreciative of all of the voters. We know that these are just exit polls, not just, they're significant, they're important. We will wait to see what other numbers come forward. But I do want to thank Professor Magleby, thank Ken Verdoia, everybody at the BYU team, and all of the volunteers. They were there at the polls when I was there, and it was a great experience. You provide a great service to the state, and we appreciate that.
And we have a question from the studio from Ken Verdoia and Dr. Magleby. So go ahead.
Attorney General, congratulations on what is a big victory tonight. Your margin is wider than several of the incumbent Republican congresspersons. I don't know if you can hear me, I hope so. They've got a lot of loud music there at the Republican Party. So I wanted to, go ahead.
Sorry, there's a lot of feedback. I apologize, I can't hear very clearly. There is a lot of music back here. I've heard people say that Republicans don't know how to party. Clearly that's not the case. We're here celebrating. I think it's a great day for Republicans nationally, and clearly here in the state of Utah, I think it's a very good day, and it could be an historic day for the Republican Party. But I couldn't hear the question. If you could repeat it, I'm happy to answer.
I'll try it one more time. I was going to say that in our polling, we compared the public's confidence in the Attorney General's office with state government, the governor, and other offices. And you've got more work to do, Attorney General, because there is a low level of confidence right now in the state in the Attorney General's office. Clearly not translated to you, but translated to the office that you are now elected to. And so there is, I think, an uphill climb there for the public to regain confidence after the swallow and shirt loaf controversies.
You know what? We've been cognizant of that dynamic from the beginning, and that's why we've worked so hard, put in so many hours, tried to do so much to restore confidence from the public into our office. I think we've achieved that internally. I know our clients are now happy. A state auditor poll just showed we have over 90% satisfaction internally from our clients. And as that level of legal excellence and our reputation continues to seep out throughout the communities and throughout the state, I believe very soon we will have the Attorney General's office back at the level of where it deserves, and that the good public servants who work there in the office, that they deserve. So we get it. We know that we started at a deficit, but we're confident that we can restore trust, and that we have restored trust already.
Thank you for joining us.
Yes, extending congratulations once again to Attorney General Sean Reyes for what appears to be, based on our exit polling and the initial results that are coming in, a substantial election victory over his Democratic challenger, Charles Stormont. Of all the storylines we're following tonight, the one that has quite surprised us has been the very narrow, what appears to be at this point, based on our exit polling. A narrow but clear victory for Representative Chris Stewart in Utah's 2nd Congressional District. This also ties directly in with a very strong showing by the Democratic candidate, Luz Robles, who is at the Salt Lake Radisson Hotel, which is the Utah Democratic Party election night headquarters, standing by with our Dave Neely. Dave?
Yeah, in the 2nd Congressional District, the race between Chris Stewart and Luz Robles. I'm joined by candidate Robles right now. You had some goals going into this campaign to register new voters, among others. What do you feel you were able to most accomplish during your campaign?
You know, our biggest win, I think, for us is to getting voters out. For us, participation was a critical issue, and we knew that was the only way we could make a difference. And we feel very confident that our numbers are going to look better and very good because of our voters coming out to vote.
Now, what can you continue to do to fight for the issues that you believe are facing Utah and Utah citizens?
You know, as a state senator, it was a nice deal for me to be able to stay in the Senate while running for office. I'm still going to have my Senate seat, and I'm certainly looking forward to serving the state of Utah, hopefully as your next Congresswoman, but if not, in the state Senate, which I'm still going to have that Senate seat.
Okay, and we have a question from the studio. Dr. Magleby, go ahead.
Ken Verdoia is going to lead off this time.
Yeah,
Ken.
and my question for Senator Robles is, first of all, this is an extraordinarily strong showing by you in what ostensibly is a very conservative district. So you brought a lot of new people to the table with your candidacy, and as you indicated, that was one of your goals. Do you sense the political dynamic of Utah changing because of our changing demographics?
Absolutely. I mean, Utah is changing, the face of Utah is changing, and we need to be responsive of that as representatives, and I think putting my name on the ballot was part of that process. I'm looking forward to continue serving the state of Utah, and I think this, as a family, was a big endeavor for us, but I'm very confident that we made a difference, and we're encouraging other minorities, women, and immigrants and Latinos, newcomers to the state of Utah, to put their name out there and to serve the state, and that's what we were doing with this campaign, and we're very proud of the outcome.
A question for you, Senator. You did, as Ken said, much better than expected, and given the showing, might be able to raise more money, and you now have much more visibility. Would you be willing to announce your candidacy for 2 years from now, given your strong showing tonight?
You know, I haven't talked and discussed that with my family or my husband, but we know that we could have, we're trying to prove something here, and all of our contributions were from individual contributors. We had only one PAC contributing $500 to our campaign, and that was it. We're proud of that. It was part of our message as well, that we didn't want special interest groups to be part of our campaign at this point. And, we're looking forward to get more support in the future, and I think this district is winnable for a Democrat if we focus on getting more voters to get registered and to get them out to vote.
Utah State Senator Luz Robles, thank you very much for your time. I know the numbers aren't exactly the way you want them to be, but they are an impressive showing. Congratulations on your campaign, and thanks for joining us tonight.
And congratulations on your baby as well.
Thank you. We're very excited and happy. Thank you very much.
All right. What we have is about 1 minute remaining, and I want to take a quick look at our Senate map to remind you of the important numbers that are coming together. The Republicans have gone +5 in the United States Senate. We need them to get, well, we don't need them, but they need to secure a +6 gain of Democratic seats swinging to the Republican to gain control of the United States Senate. As you can see, the numbers are stacking up. Some of the close races have broken in the favor of the Republican Party. We are going to take a break for about 30 minutes. When we return, we will have additional Utah exit poll data to share with you. We will be able to make perhaps even further projections on some of the Utah races. We will continue sharing with you updates of all the hard vote counts that we're getting. We'll be back with you on the other side of an update from PBS about the national polling results. Again, this is Vote Utah 2014 from the campus of Brigham Young University, KBYU's broadcast team, bringing you the Utah election exit poll. We'll be back in just about 30 minutes.
Production of Vote Utah 2014 election night coverage is made possible by generous grants from Zions Bank, serving the communities of Utah for over 140 years. Zions Bank offers a range of banking services for individuals and businesses, large and small. Learn more at zionsbank.com. And from Qualtrics, supporting business and the academic community with online survey services and expertise. More information at qualtrics.com. Qualtrics, the ridiculously powerful insight platform. And from the law firm of Ray, Quinney & Nebeker, a multi-service local law firm actively seeking to improve the quality of life in our community. Over 100 attorneys serve Utahns' legal needs from offices in Salt Lake City and Provo. Learn more at rqn.com. Additional production funding comes from Google, a global technology leader focused on improving the ways people connect with information. And from Nu Skin, demonstrating a 30-year commitment to community support and offering nutritional and personal care products. Nu Skin, the difference demonstrated. Learn more at nuskin.com.